I need to tell you about Tuesday. Not Tuesday at Manny's. I was not at Manny's on Tuesday. I came home on Tuesday evening from a meeting with Harriet that ran late, which Harriet's meetings frequently do, because Harriet approaches professional conversations the way a geologist approaches an excavation, with the conviction that there is always more underneath if you dig far enough, and with the patience to dig. I came home at 6:30. On my doorstep, there was a box. Not a large box, approximately the dimensions of a hat box, square, cardboard, sealed with the kind of adhesive tape that is very good at its job. No return address. A label with my name and address in a typeface that I did not recognize. Not handwriting, not the specific mechanical font of a typewriter. Something else. Something with an evenness and precision that no typewriter achieves. I stood on the step with my coat and my bag, and I looked at the box. I was not frightened. I want to be specific about this because the not frightened is relevant. Someone who was not a professional observer of the world might have been frightened. A box with no return address and an unfamiliar typeface, appearing without explanation on a Tuesday doorstep. But I am someone who has spent a year looking at things, and the looking has produced in me a specific disposition toward the new and the unexplained. Not fear, but attention. I picked up the box. I carried it upstairs. I set it on my kitchen table. I made tea. And then I sat down across from the box, and I looked at it for 10 minutes before I opened it. Inside the box, on top of everything else, was a letter. One sheet of paper. The same typeface as the label. The paper was different from the paper I write on. Different from the paper in my notebooks, from the paper in the newspapers. Thinner in some ways, very smooth. The surface with a specific quality I cannot name because I do not have a word for it. The quality of paper that has been made by a process I don't know about. The letter. Miss Lane, we thought you should see this. You have been looking at things all year, looking at the ordinary things around you and finding in them more than the ordinary. We have been watching you look. Here are some more things to look at. The device works. The battery is charged. Instructions are inside. Please read them before you touch anything. The small white objects go in your ears. The large flat one with the glass front shows pictures when you touch it. The silver box is for making images. Do not try to open any of them. We cannot tell you where this came from. We think you already know, in the way that you know things before you have the words for them. We thought you should see how the world looks from further along. We are glad you have been looking. Someone from much later. I read this letter 3 times. Then I set it aside and looked at the rest of the box. I am going to describe what was in the box as I found it, in the order I found it, because the order is relevant, because what I saw first shaped how I understood what I saw second, and the sequence of understanding is part of what I want to tell you. On top of the letter, a small notebook. Not a special notebook, approximately the size of the notebooks I use for the series, softcover, lined pages. The writing inside was handwritten, careful, clear, as though written by someone who knew the reader would need to follow it precisely. The writing said things like, "The large black rectangle is the phone. Hold the button on the right side for 2 seconds to turn it on." And, "The glass front responds to touch. Press it with your finger. 1 finger at a time unless the instructions say otherwise." And, "The 2 small white objects are headphones. They fit in your ears. They connect to the phone by a process you don't need to understand. Put them in your ears when you want to hear music privately." And, "The flat rectangle is a tablet. It works like the phone, but larger." And, "The silver box is a camera. There is a button on the top right. Press it once to take a picture." And at the end, The black rectangular box is a power bank. It will recharge the other devices when they run low. When the power bank is empty, the devices will eventually stop working. I read the notebook 3 times before I touched anything. Then I looked at the objects themselves. The phone. Black. Approximately the size of a playing card, but thicker. Not much thicker. The front. Entirely glass. No visible controls, no visible buttons, no speaker grill, no dial, no switch. The back. Also glass, or something that looks like glass but feels different. Darker, with a subtle texture. In the upper left corner of the back, a small raised square containing 3 circular lenses of different sizes, arranged in a triangle. The lenses are black, very black. The kind of black that absorbs light rather than reflecting it. The edge, 3 buttons. One on the right side, which the notebook identifies as the power button. 2 on the left side, which the notebook says control volume. No other buttons anywhere. No visible keyboard. No visible way to input text or numbers. No dial, no toggle, no lever. Nothing that moves in any direction I can see. The phone is a flat piece of glass and metal, with 3 buttons and 3 small black circles on its back. And it is, somehow, the most important object in the box. I could tell this before I knew what it was, the way you can sometimes tell before knowing. The way certain objects communicate their significance through some quality of presence that precedes understanding. The phone was in the box, and the box was full of other things. And the phone was what the box was about. The tablet. Larger than the phone. Approximately the dimensions of a magazine, but thinner. And the thinness is remarkable. I did not know glass and metal could be made this thin without being fragile. And yet, it did not feel fragile. Solid. The same glass front, the same button on one edge, the same 2 cameras on the back, but smaller than the phones. The headphones, 2 small white objects approximately the size of the tip of my thumb, each slightly tapered toward the end that would enter the ear. Smooth, warm, or warming quickly in my hand. No visible connection between them. No wire, no cord. They are simply 2 small white objects that are somehow, according to the notebook, connected to each other and to the phone without any physical connection I can see. This is the most immediately impossible of the objects. 2 objects with no connection between them that are connected. The camera. Silver, compact, slightly heavier than it looks. This one I recognized, not specifically, but categorically. I know what cameras are. I have been photographed by cameras many times. The camera in this box is smaller than any camera I have encountered, with a larger lens than the cameras I know, and a small screen on the back that the notebook says shows you what the camera sees before you take the picture. The power bank. A flat black rectangle, smaller than the phone, with a small indicator on the side that shows 4 dots of light. Full, according to the notebook, means 4 dots. Empty means none. I sat with all of this for approximately 20 minutes before I touched any of it. I want to tell you what I thought for those 20 minutes, because the thinking before is always different from the thinking during and the thinking after, and all 3 are different kinds of true. I thought, this is not a hoax. Not because I have particular evidence that it is not a hoax. The letter is plausible, the objects are convincing, but a sufficiently motivated person with sufficient resources could construct a convincing hoax of various kinds. I thought it was not a hoax because of the quality of the objects themselves, the specific thinness of the phone, the specific nature of the glass on the front. I tapped it gently with my fingernail before picking it up. and the sound it made was not the sound of the glass I know. The quality of the construction. Whatever these are made of, they are made with a precision that exceeds what I know to be possible. I am 33 years old, and I have been paying attention to materials and workmanship for 33 years. I know what precision looks like when it is produced by the best available methods in 1949. This exceeds the best available methods in 1949. This is not a hoax. I thought, the letter says, from much later. The notebook says things like, a process you don't need to understand. As if there are processes involved that I would not be able to understand even if they were explained. This implies that the gap between my knowledge and the knowledge required to understand these objects is large. Not large as in a few years of development I haven't kept up with. Large as in fundamentally different category of knowledge. I thought, these are from the future. I thought this with the specific quality of thinking a thing that you know is true before you have worked out why you know it. The way you know that a performance is genuine before you have analyzed what specifically makes it so. The knowledge precedes the analysis. These are from the future. I thought, someone chose to send this to me. Not to the President of the United States, not to a scientist or a military official or a person of obvious institutional importance. To me. To an actress who lives on West 54th Street and comes to Manny's on Tuesdays. The letter said, "You have been looking at things all year." Someone in the future read the episodes. Someone in the future knows my name. I sat with this. I picked up the phone. The weight was lighter than I expected. Objects with this quality of solidity tend to be heavier in my experience, but this was lighter, as though the density of what it contains is not expressed in the weight of the container. I held it in my right hand. It fit exactly. The dimensions calibrated, I thought, to the human hand, to the specific size of the human palm and the span of the human fingers. This object was designed to be held. Not by me specifically, by the generic human hand. But the specific quality of fitting in the hand communicated, this belongs here. The way a good tool always communicates that it belongs in the hand that uses it. The way a well-balanced instrument feels like an extension of the body rather than a separate object. I pressed the button on the right side. Held it for 2 seconds, as the notebook specified. The front of the phone lit up. Not lit up in the way of a lamp being switched on, not a gradual warming, not a flicker, not the specific quality of incandescent light coming to life. Instantaneous. One fraction of a second, it was dark glass. The next fraction of a second, it was a screen. Vivid, bright, showing colors that I have never seen produced by any display technology, colors with a saturation and precision that the neon signs of Times Square approximate and do not match. The screen showed a photograph. A photograph that was, I will describe it as I saw it, without the words I have since found for it. A landscape, mountains, a sky of a specific deep blue that is the sky just after sunset, the air clear in the way of high altitude, a small light on the horizon that might be the last of the sun or a distant star. The photograph was in a rectangle in the lower half of the screen. The upper half showed the time and the date in white text. The time, 6:47 p.m. Accurate. It was approximately 6:47 when I turned on the phone. The date, February 12th, 1949. And below it, in smaller text, something else. A year that was not 1949. The year on the screen was 2026. February 12th, 2026. I am in February 1949. The phone is in February 2026. We are in the same room. Both of these statements are true simultaneously, and the truth of both simultaneously is the most disorienting thing I have encountered this year, which is a year in which I encountered a great deal that was disorienting. I want to try to say what the disorientation is, because the disorientation is interesting, and not just the shock of something unexpected. When I flew to Boston, when I was in the airplane at 8,000 feet and New York was below me as a grid, I described the specific quality of being the director, of seeing the shape of the city from outside it. The view from above that showed me the whole while I was usually inside the part. Two truths about the same thing, held simultaneously. The phone is a version of this. I am inside 1949. I am inside my specific moment in time, my specific Tuesday, my specific kitchen, my specific tea getting cold on the counter. I am inside it the way I am inside all my moments, completely, with no perspective on it from outside, unable to see its shape because I am in its texture. The phone is outside 1949. The phone is in 2026, which means it is in a position relative to 1949 that I cannot occupy. The position of after. The position of having passed through all the intervening years and arrived at a place from which 1949 is visible as what it is, a specific year in the past, with a specific shape, with specific things happening in it that have already resolved into their outcomes. I am inside the unresolved year. The phone is outside it. Both of us are on my kitchen table. The lock screen, this is what the notebook calls the initial display, the photograph, the time, the date. To proceed past the lock screen, the notebook says, "Swipe your finger upward across the glass." I tried this. I swiped my finger upward across the glass. The screen changed. I want to describe this carefully because it is the first moment of what I will come to think of as the phone's responsiveness, the specific quality of an object that responds to you, that receives your gestures and translates them into action. The lock screen dissolved upward and was replaced by something else. A field of small colored squares, each containing a different image or symbol, arranged in a grid on the same photograph background. The notebook calls these apps, applications, programs, things the phone can do. Each small square is a door into a different capability. The phone contains dozens of doors. I did not go through any of them immediately. I sat and looked at the grid of small squares and thought about what each one might be. Some of them had text I could read, camera, maps, settings, music. Others had symbols I did not recognize, a stylized camera, a musical note, a magnifying glass, a small envelope. The envelope. I know what envelopes are for. I touched the envelope. The screen changed to something that looked like a list of letters, or would look like letters if letters could be shown on a screen rather than written on paper. The screen showed a list of what appeared to be messages. They were in a language I could read, but the content made no sense to me. References to things I did not know, names I did not recognize, abbreviations I could not decode. These messages were not meant for me. These messages were meant for whoever owned this phone in 2026. I touched the back arrow symbol the notebook identified and returned to the grid of doors. And I sat for a while looking at the doors. I touched the camera door. The screen changed to something extraordinary. The screen was showing me not a photograph, a live image, a real-time moving image of what the phone's camera could see. The phone was lying on my kitchen table, and the camera was pointing at the ceiling, and the screen was showing me my ceiling in real time. The same ceiling I had been staring at during the strep throat fever, the same small crack in the northeast corner. My ceiling, on the screen, as it was at that exact moment. I picked up the phone and pointed it at the window. The window appeared on the screen. The street below. The specific February light on the street below. All of it in the specific colors I described. The saturation. The precision. I pointed it at the geranium. The geranium appeared on the screen. Red. Vivid. More vivid than I usually see it, as though the phone's camera is doing something to the color that my eye cannot do, pulling the red toward its most extreme version of itself. I pressed the button the notebook indicated was the shutter. A sound. A click. Not the loud mechanical click of the cameras I know. A soft, brief, almost whispered click. The notebook said, "Your picture will appear in the bottom left corner." I looked at the bottom left corner. A small version of the photograph was there. I touched it. The screen showed me the photograph I had just taken. The geranium. On my windowsill. February 1949. In colors that the color photography I had seen before could not produce. The red of the geranium was the red of the geranium. Not an approximation, not a representation. The actual color, reproduced with a fidelity that made me feel I was looking at the geranium rather than a picture of it. I sat with this photograph for a long time. I need to explain what the photograph of the geranium did, because it did something specific that I want to try to describe. I have been looking at the geranium for 14 months. 14 months of Tuesday mornings going past the window, of the lamplight in the evenings falling on it and making it slightly different from the daylight version, of the specific February cold that makes the window a less hospitable place for a plant, but that the geranium tolerates. 14 months of knowing it was there. The photograph showed me the geranium. Not showed me as in revealed. I knew what a geranium looked like. Showed me as in made it available as an object of perception rather than an element of the background. There is a distinction here that I have been thinking about since I first described the looking versus seeing problem that started the First Time series. Seeing is what the automatic mode produces. You register the geranium. You note that it is there. It enters the peripheral processing of the visual system and is filed. Looking is what the directed attention produces. You turn toward it. You take it in. You let it be fully present in your perception. The photograph forced me to look. Because the photograph was a specific, bounded, composed image of the geranium, not the geranium in the context of the windowsill and the window and the street beyond and the whole ambient visual field of my kitchen. Just the geranium. Isolated, given full attention by the act of composition. The phone had looked at the geranium, and because the phone had looked, I was able to see what the phone had seen. This is one of the things cameras do that I had not fully understood before. They force the looking that the everyday prevents. The everyday is full, too full for sustained looking at any one thing. The camera makes a choice, isolates the thing, holds it still. And what the holding still produces is the ability to see the thing as itself, rather than as an element of the flow. The geranium in the photograph was entirely itself. Red, specific, irreplaceable. I had been living with it for 14 months, and the phone had shown it to me more clearly in 1 second than I had managed in all the months of daily proximity. I was exploring the camera application when it happened. There is a button, I had found it by exploring, that switches the camera from the back-facing lens to the front-facing lens. The notebook mentions it in passing. The small circle in the upper right switches between front and back camera. I pressed it. The screen changed from showing the kitchen to showing a face. My face. Not a photograph, a live image, moving, real time. The face doing what faces do in real time. Blinking, the slight adjustments of expression that the face makes continuously without the person whose face it is being aware of making them. I stared at my own face on the screen for approximately 30 seconds before I understood what I was looking at. In a mirror, the image is reversed. What is on my left appears on the right, which is why people are sometimes surprised by photographs of themselves, because the photograph shows the face as others see it, rather than the mirror image that is the face as the self sees it. The phone's front camera showed my face as others see it. Unreversed. Correct. The face that Jack sees when he looks at me. The face that Rita sees when she brings the coffee. The face that is me from the outside. I had known this about photographs, had known intellectually that photographs show the correct orientation, while mirrors show the reversed. But knowing this and seeing it in a live, moving image are different things. In a photograph, the face is frozen, a fixed moment, something you can study and assess and decide whether you find it accurate. In the live camera image, it is moving, it is present, it is doing all the things a face does in a moment that is happening. It is me. Not my idea of me. Me. I made an expression. I watched the expression happen on the screen. I raised my eyebrow. I watched the eyebrow raise. I smiled. I watched the smile. I am describing this process because it is more than vanity, though there is vanity in it, the specific vanity of encountering your own face with unusual clarity and wanting to understand what you see. It is also the specific experience of seeing yourself as an object rather than as a subject, of being for a moment both the person looking and the person being looked at. This is what the camera does. It makes you both the observer and the observed simultaneously. For 20 years, I have been a professional observed person, on stage, on screen, in the specific public position of an actress whose work is to be watched. I have never been the observer of my own observed self, not in real time, not in motion. The phone gave me this,